This should be the primetime story on every major news network, but the government and healthcare system are never going to want to talk about it. Today we'll talk about why many Americans do not and will never trust the government or the healthcare system. Welcome to Restoring America with Grace Reilly. It is so great to be with you. The topic for today is a serious one, but one that is so crazy that it's hard to take seriously. I feel like that's the case a lot of time. But today we are going to be talking about a new study of nearly 2 million children that found that myocarditis and pericarditis were only in children who received the COVID vaccines. 0 unvaccinated children in the study suffered from these serious, potentially fatal heart-related problems. This is the kind of thing that many of us were saying all along, those of us who refused to get the vaccine and were berated, shamed, and exiled because of it. And there's more. Because of legal pressure, the FDA has retracted its claims against ivermectin, the drug that many showed signs of success from, but was demonized by the government. So 2 things here that were big that happened during COVID. We had the push for the vaccine and the demonization of a drug called ivermectin that many were showing successes from and trying to call for and use, but hospitals and doctors were completely against it, and it turns out that all the so-called conspiracy theorists were right. So let's just take a quick stroll back through memory lane. COVID has a 99.9% survival rate. I know people who it impacted negatively, and my heart goes out to all of those people, but for most people, myself included, it was typically a cold or barely anything at all. And looking back at it from the perspective of healthy people, it's kind of crazy when I remember that I was forced to quarantine in college over having no symptoms because I was contact traced and whatnot. For young people, this is something that is not distinguishable from a normal illness or cold. I mean, I know many people who have the same experience where the flu is far worse. Basically, long story short, a bunch of people wanted to use ivermectin to heal quicker. They were labeled conspiracy theorists and demonized and called out, but now it turns out that they were right, and the FDA had to walk back the claims that they had made. So crazy stuff. So anyway, now for our stroll back to 2020, it is hard to believe that just a few short years ago, our government told us 2 weeks to slow the spread. Remember that? I mean, really? I remember thinking at the time, there's no way. Obviously, like medically, that's not a thing. Whenever the government says stuff like that, like it was alarming at the start. And of course, as many called out at the time, it turned out that yes, it was in fact a lie, a slippery slope, and it ended up turning into years of impact after. I still see people wearing masks, there's all sorts of things. Beyond 2 weeks for sure. And at this time, of course, quarantines were forced on us. My school shut down at the time. I didn't finish the semester. The school shutting down delayed development of kids, which they say we're still recovering from. They like to blame our national report card terrible school scores on this. It's obviously a much more deeper rooted issue, but there certainly was impacts on kids, both academically, socially, and otherwise. And definitely on Gen Z, which, I mean, again, pivotal years of their lives were just shut down and jumped over. We were all pressured and near forced to get the COVID vaccine when all of this was happening. Exile and shame was the result of not getting it. I was in college at the time, and I remember that a majority of schools would literally not let you go to their school without having the vaccine. This is again more evidence of the fact that young people were completely screwed over. I mean, everyone was in our country and across the world, but especially young people, it was a special disservice to, especially considering how little of an impact COVID had on them. So this was a requirement to go to many colleges, which is obviously immense pressure that young people were put under to get this vaccine and be boosted. We were also told that we would need vaccine passports to live in society, to go to restaurants, to go out in public, get our haircut, to travel, and more. People were not even allowed to go outside without masks on. Even then, people were demonized in certain states for being outside during COVID. I mean, this was insane stuff, and it wasn't just from the government, it was from all of our neighbors and peers, which was really sad at the time. I mean, a lot of people who were unvaccinated were basically blamed for COVID, called grandma killers, and, which never made sense, of course, because if people were vaccinated and wearing masks, then why wasn't that enough to protect them from COVID? Why were they so concerned about other people being unvaccinated if that had been another person's choice? But of course, we saw all this, and people even were exiling family members who were unvaccinated, not allowing them to come over for holidays or spend time together. Like, we saw all of this in that period of time. And I think even beyond this, the conversation we're having now, like, just in the sense of government overreach and how we treat our neighbors, like, we've got to pause and look back at what we all allowed and were okay with during that time. I feel like we kind of like to just forget about it. It's this crazy blip in the radar that happened a few years ago, but it's not that long ago, and it was so insane. We should have been having like a national conversation just repeatedly over how much we allowed from the government. And are we going to allow this all to happen to us again, allow ourselves to be manipulated like this, the government to act like this, and have that much overreach? Naturally, on the vaccine topic, many got the vaccine, including many young people who were healthy and not at risk of serious illness or death. Healthy kids were virtually unaffected by COVID, with slim to none chances of this serious illness and death. And of course, we saw, in addition to schools pushing the vaccine, we saw medical places. So one example is the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they recommend the COVID vaccine for all children age 6 months through 23 months. Okay, so this was added into the infant vaccine schedule. They were vaccinating babies, young children. The myocarditis tie has been something that many have been talking about for years, and again, called conspiracy theorists for and crazy. And there have been plenty of people who have been calling this out from the beginning. Theo Vaughn had Dr. Peter McCullough, a cardiologist who's been investigating this, and he had some crazy things to say about myocarditis. Let's watch.
What are some of the most common side effects that you've seen from the COVID-19 vaccines?
Most concerning is fatal heart damage, myocarditis. Fatal. There was a very important paper by Crosson, Krauson, from Harvard, that found in some people who took the vaccines, found that the messenger RNA is physically in the heart. That's a bad sign. Whatever you take in the arm should not end up in the heart. Mm-hmm. So it has a tropism for the heart. It actually has a predilection to go in the heart. Another paper by Baumeier, 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 found the spike protein in the heart. He didn't have the tech to find the messenger RNA, but he found the spike protein in the heart. And there you go. That should be Baumeier. That's it. So these are images showing inflammation and spike protein in the heart. Mm-hmm. Now, the triggers, we've had myocarditis rarely before the pandemic from various viruses and other forms of inflammation. It was known then that we can never let these people exercise, because if they exercise, the surge of adrenaline through exercise can trigger this abnormal heart rhythm.
Wow.
It's in our guidelines. So as the vaccines roll out, and we've had a U.S. Senate hearing on this in May of 2025, people started getting heart damage with the vaccines. The U.S. government got communications from Israel saying, listen, we gave the vaccine to all our soldiers. We got 60 cases of heart damage, and 2 cases are fatal. This came in February of 2021. The public health agencies, they all sat on this. The White House sat on this, and they didn't inform the public. And so more people got vaccinated. Then a big bomb hit in August of 2021, where a paper was published from Washington University in St. Louis. First author is Verma, V-E-R-M-A. And they describe a 42-year-old man who takes a Moderna shot, develops myocarditis, gets really sick, goes in the hospital, and he dies right in front of them. They can't save him. With all the technology that we have, life support systems, everything else, he dies. Brutal, fatal myocarditis. And this is New England Journal of Medicine. But here's my point.
Okay.
If there was a new drug on the market and we gave it to somebody and they died of fatal heart damage, there'd be product warnings, withdrawals. Doctors would say, wait a minute, I'm not concerned. Doctors showed no concern over this. Outside of me, I saw this. I said, you got to be kidding me. This kills a healthy 42-year-old man. If Moderna can kill a healthy 42-year-old man with all the technology and we can't save him, do you know how many people are dying in nursing homes, in athletic fields, and in schools, and all over? And how many people are dying in underdeveloped countries?
And doctors continued to push it anyways, without concern. And even beyond this, there are reports, GB News just reported that the vaccine skipped vital safety checks, and this is quote unquote due to time constraints. That came from a former toxicologist at Pfizer. So the shots were not checked for cancer-causing properties or tested for many more things. I mean, so they've admitted that with the time constraints, they kind of rushed this out, pushed it over, but now we're seeing more effects, and it's really sad. It's really sad to hear about impacts like this and symptoms like this. And hopefully hopefully they're not far spread. That's the hope here. But the point is, people were demonized for even questioning this back then. This is something that's so criminal and serious to have been pushing this vaccine when it has such serious possibilities that could come from it, especially onto children who were not at risk of death or serious illness from COVID in the first place. And what this comes down to is that it is a real picture of why so many people are frustrated with the government and why people do not trust the healthcare system, myself included, okay? So you talk about this whole vaccine thing and everyone wants to say, oh, these people are anti-vax, they're conspiracy theorists, all this stuff, they're just crazy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. No, actually, they've witnessed the healthcare system verifiably push things that were not in the best interest of health. The child vaccine schedule has been a conversation recently brought up by RFK Jr. with all the MAHA stuff. And the reason is because people have started saying, is it really the best thing to be putting like tens of vaccines on, I'm not sure the exact number off the top of my head, but a lot of vaccines on babies right when they're born and then their most pivotal growth periods. I mean, people have started to say, this seems like maybe it might not be the best thing. So all of this has emerged from very real places. And I'm definitely a proponent of saying everyone should do research, understand things. I'm not going to say every vaccine in the world's bad, like at all. Like, I think you should do research, understand the studies, the health benefits, etc. So I think you should look at this with discernment. But on something like this that was so hastily pushed and in the way it was pushed, especially to myself, my generation, I mean, pressure I faced at the time, I wanted to study abroad someday, and I thought I would be forced to get the vaccine in order to possibly study abroad. I wouldn't ever be able to travel in my life, is what it felt like at the time. At that time, that's what the reality was. That's what they were pushing. And now on ivermectin, a tweet from the same doctor that you just heard from in the video with Theo Vaughn, Peter McCullough, and DC Drano is correct here when he says that people were literally banned off social media for talking about ivermectin being a helpful drug for COVID. People were also banned and censored for talking about the vaccine. Basically everything I've said in this episode was stuff I'd have to worry about being censored for online or banned for, and I don't even know if that's still in place or not, so who knows how many people will see this, but that was a thing. Like back in 2020, you would get the health stamps on any post you would put out, calling you misinformation if you question the narrative. So that was another whole layer to this government overreach. It was the speech overreach that came from the social media platforms and beyond, where you were censored and flagged if you posted anything that wasn't in line with the exact narrative that they were pushing out about the pandemic. Insane stuff that, again, it's like, how did all of this happen with no consequences? I'm certainly not going to stand for it ever to happen again, and I hope that more people feel that way too, and that we all can learn from what happened and make sure that we never let this happen again, because I wouldn't be surprised if something like it does. So going into this tweet, what happened was the FDA had to withdraw their false ivermectin claims because of this legal pressure. So that's a huge deal and a huge validation for all of the people who were slandered for years for talking about, hey, ivermectin might actually be okay. And now there's the first peer-reviewed study, so the first big study just came out showing it being studied to help cure cancer and help with healing different kinds of cancers, because there's been talks about that for a long time as well. There's a lot of different doctors who have advocated this, but of course they're kind of exiled from the mainstream when they do, for whatever reason. The government and media's reaction following all of this stuff, following everything from COVID, following everything we've learned since, especially medically, with this very serious possibility of fatal heart problems happening to young people who are supposed to be young and healthy. So looking at all of this and the fact that we really have not seen any responsibility or accountability come from the government, the media, people like Fauci. We don't have people in jail for this. There's so much from all of that. And the fact that it's just ignored and we're going to just pretend that never happened and moved on, even though it was extremely problematic, that is why people do not trust and don't have hope to. Our level of trust doesn't change because the problems within these systems do not change. As far as we're all concerned, it's a continuing problem where the government and the media clearly are not putting the people's best interest first. Thank you so much for joining us on Restoring America. Be sure to subscribe, like, and leave us 5 stars to help support the show and so that you can keep up to date on each episode. You can find us on all social media platforms at the handles listed on the screen. This show is powered by the amazing Restoration of America. Be sure to go to restorationofamerica.com for much more, and I will see you next time.